Okay, hello and welcome to Whistleblower Heroes, everyday heroes and educators sharing the information that you need to know here on Revolution Radio. And I'm your host, Ella. You can join us live every Tuesday starting at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and every Friday starting at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time by visiting freedomslips.com and clicking on Studio A. So today I have two highly important guests, and let me get to our first guest. Her name is Sharon Daugherty, and today we are going to be discussing a very, very important topic. And the one that is it's not only just highly important, it's personal to me and apparently to 1 out of 4 women in the United States. And this subject matter is sexual assault. And Sharon is an activist, to say the very least. And this is a lengthy intro because her work is so important, and it should be. She should have a lengthy intro here. So I just want to say, Sharon, thanks for coming to the call first.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm always excited to have these conversations.
Okay, so I think we'll start with what is an activist? I mean, you are an activist, and I think it's important to define that. An activist is a person who works to promote social or political change regarding issues that they feel passionate about. A survivor is someone who carries on despite hardships or trauma, sometimes even turning their misfortune into a gift. When you put those two together, you have Sharon Daugherty. Sharon has demonstrated an outstanding commitment to ending sexual violence in Florida through years of public awareness initiatives, sharing her own story in service to survivors of sexual violence. She has dedicated her life to the movement and has gone on to make quite an impact. Sharon formed the nation's first sexual assault survivor dance theater company, Inner Motion, which inspired an award-winning documentary about her pioneering work and impacted thousands of participants and attendees who participated over the years. She has been a presenter and committee chair for national and state conferences for organizations such as Voices, Victims of Incest Can Emerge Survivors, FCASV, the Seminole Indian Tribe, and the U.S. Navy. She worked one-on-one with survivors at the Sexual Assault Treatment Center in Broward County and for the Florida legislature, where she was able to educate our state's policymakers about the issue of sexual assault. Sharon is gifted at developing other survivor activists, which is evident through her creation of the Survivor Action Team, a group so unique it caught the attention of CNN, who recently taped a meeting to include an upcoming documentary. By coaching other survivors, Sharon has developed a network of individuals who are able to personally relate to every population, male, female, LGBT, transsexual, etc., an army of survivors to speak to the media and integrate into community events and training presentations, and also, I think, to bring public awareness. So, Sharon, I am truly honored that you're here with me today. Is there anything I missed that you'd like to include in your description? Because you're just such an amazing person, and I'm sure there's more to your work and more to your background than this.
One of the things I want people to know for sure is that as hard as life has been and what I've been dealt, I have also then been blessed 10 times over to have the grit and the resilience somehow to have made it through and to have been able to envision that things could be different and that I could help make them different is a blessing. Not only that, when I became estranged from my original family, who I'm back in touch with now, but it took like decades, I built other family bonds with some of my best friends and their families who are now sisters to me. So I have such a deep and profound community of sisters. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think people connect with people who have gone through similar tragedies, similar struggles. I think there's a deep, intimate connection when that occurs and you find each other.
Right.
Do you want to? Are you comfortable sharing a little bit about what your own personal experiences were?
I sure am. Yes.
Okay.
I feel like when people have done their therapy and they've lived through it and come out to a place of truly being healed, when we talk about surviving and what happened, it's really in service. It's what I call use of self. It's to allow people to see that we can talk about it and not crumble, and that other people might relate and find some hope in someone else's story. And so, yes, my sexual abuse started from my father, Ed Daugherty, who is my real father. I grew up in what appeared by, on the outside to be a normal family, because that's what happens. It's something you hide, and the perpetrator is really skilled at grooming you to hide it and pretend everything is okay on the outside. There were lots of warnings as I was growing up. Also, if you tell your mother, she'll, throw me in jail, she'll divorce me, I'll be in jail and they'll kill me in jail. If you tell, you and your sister and your brother and your mom will be out on the street, you will have nowhere to live, you'll be homeless, or just, many other things. He would just tell me all along the way. So I began to feel guilty. And it was almost like my responsibility to keep a roof over our head, even though I was only 6 and 7 and 8. But you grow up with that. And then you begin to feel guilty after a while for not telling. And you're thinking, they're going to blame me because I didn't tell for so long. They're going to say, well, why didn't you tell me sooner? And then, of course, you begin feeling a lot of shame and guilt. And I used to feel really nasty and dirty and slutty. So by then, trying to tell anyone became like an impossible wall to get over. Along the way, though, I did tell a few people and was shut down because of just the times. And even now, people shut down survivors. A lot less, though.
Right.
But I once told my best friend's mom, and she said, go tell your mother. Well, my mother was allowing herself to be beaten and tossed around and just verbally abused. My dad was also an alcoholic. So she was not someone I thought would protect me either. So I was hoping that mom would go tell my mom. That didn't happen. And then one time in middle school, a very astute guidance counselor looked me directly in the eye and he said, is something going on at your house with your dad? Is he doing something to you? And I just lied. I was like, no, I'm good. It's all good. How I wish I'd spoken up then, because it might have changed my life. However, there was also the very real fear of being tossed into a foster care situation. So that's also something I didn't want to have happen to my sister and I and brother and have us get broken up. So I lived with it for a long time, but I did finally leave home at 16. So I moved out to get away from him. I moved in with an older biker guy named Ron, who protected me. I found the biggest, baddest, toughest guy I could find. And that is what happened. I told him all about my dad, and he took me in and he protected me. And I'm, forever grateful to Ron for that time. And I did drop out of high school. I couldn't maintain a full-time job and go to high school at the same time. I was exhausted. So I managed to still get myself back into college, though, and then knew way back when, I've known all my life, that there must be other kids going through the same thing all over the world at the same time as me. And when we grow up, we're going to all get together and we're going to do something to stop it. And I'm telling you, I knew this from the first time I was abused. I thought these thoughts. And I was really little. I was like, 6 years old. And I was thinking of ways, how am I going to change this? Well, I'm stuck now. I felt like I was in a hostage situation.
Yes.
But I held on and found my way through life. And there's more I could talk about. Do you want me to pause, though? Do you want to comment?
It's up to you. I can just tell you I've had similar situations. And I can't believe this happens so much, like to 7 and 8 year olds, because I had some issues like 7 or 8 years old as well. And I thought that was disgustingly young.
Right.
It's surprising to me. And then I had a relative who had started to abuse me, but I thought, well, if they're not, and when I got older, I thought, Well, he didn't actually have sex with me, but so I lightened it somehow. And I once did try to
Right,
bring it up to my mother, and she says, I don't believe you. That's what she said
right.
to me. So I kept other things
Yeah.
to myself and kept it quiet for a while. And then I had a predator who actually tried to kidnap me when I was 7, a sexual predator. And he was actually
Wow.
naked in his car when he tried to kidnap me. It was
How did you get
unbelievable.
away?
I just pulled away and I'm a runner. So I've always been, I'm not running so much
Thank
these days, but I was like a track star and like everything. So
good,
I have that
good.
running ability. Yeah. And
Um,
he seemed
yep.
high too. He seemed like he was on something. There's no way he was going to catch me. That's for sure.
Yeah,
So, and I
definitely. That
laugh
running
about
was
it, but you have to laugh. And you may understand this. Sometimes I laugh like that because it was so horrible, so horrific. And my mom helped start, have you heard of Block Parent? Do you remember that? Like people would put it up
hmm.
in their windows. It was something in
Oh yeah.
California. She helped start that organization because of
Mm-hmm.
that. hmm So of
I've
course, and
heard
it
of
really
that.
brought an awareness to the community, and the police got involved, and it became such a huge ordeal where I lived that we actually something positive came out of it. We became like a really
Right.
tight community. Mothers took the time to
Wow.
get to know each other. People started putting those papers, the block. Document in the
Yep.
windows. So that was the
Hmm.
safe houses. And, you'd go and you check out the other parents. So we became closer as a community because of that particular experience.
Right, and that would keep them from coming around knowing they're going to be
That's
watched and
right.
stopped. And
Yeah.
absolutely, everybody needs to be responsible for everybody in their community.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I
And
had the same
it's,
thing
yeah.
happen. I told my mom, and it took me a long time. And her response was, "So, what did you do to turn him on?"
Oh,
And yeah, by the time I got older, she had identified me as the mistress.
that's
That's
just
how she
so
looked at
sad.
it. So,
Yeah. My mom, I think, thought that this person, this relative of ours, who was a step relative, he was not biological to us, he was so charming and charismatic, and everybody
mhm,
adored him. But those are the
right,
personalities sometimes we need to look out for. Yeah.
that's right.
hmm
So I go into college and I decide, well, I guess I'll need to be a psychologist because those are all the books I'm reading and I'm doing a lot of therapy on myself. So that's the best way I'm going to help survivors. But the whole time I'm in college, I'm thinking, I have no idea how this is going to change the world. I mean, this is like going to be one person at a time, maybe a group therapy, but okay, I'll keep learning. So I went on and got my bachelor's in psychology and my master's in mental health counseling. But it was during that time I had also, I have a love of dance, just an innate gift for storytelling through movement. And I've always done that ever since I've been little, expressive movement, that kind of thing. It was
hmm
while I was in college then, while I had my regular dance company, that I got the idea to mix the two and create a dance theater company comprised of survivors of sexual assault. And that is where I thought of Inner Motion. And that's what happened. I came back down to Broward County and started Inner Motion, which became a national touring company. In fact, we never went on the tour, but we were invited by the military to do a USO tour. That would have been great. But at that time, everybody couldn't just leave their jobs. They had day jobs. So Inner Motion was phenomenal. And from that, the audience that would watch all these different healing scenarios that were written into it, and they saw how the dancers embodied grace and empowerment and confidence, they would ask, can we get some of that? We don't want to really perform on stage, but could you do a movement class for us? So that's what happened over the 15 years I was doing Inner Motion. I developed these movement workshops for survivors to get connected with their feelings and reconnect with their bodies and find new ways of healing and expressing their feelings.
And we both know that when someone's been traumatized like that, you almost disconnect from your body.
Absolutely.
Disassociation of some sort. It just varies from person
Yeah.
to person. Of course, there's the post-traumatic stress disorder and the guilt and the shame, and the person's done nothing. That's so sad. It's like not only you victimized, but you
Right.
you feel so poorly about yourself, your
I
self-esteem, your
know.
confidence, your
Right.
ability to trust.
Right. Well, there's all kinds of things going on. You have this lack of power, and sometimes we blame ourselves because that's a way to say, well, if I should have done this or I could have done that, it's a game we're playing with ourselves like you had some kind of control, where the truth is there was no control. Things were totally out of control, but sometimes that's even harder for survivors to manage that thought, because that makes people feel so chaotic they can feel crazy. It's a crazy making kind of thing anyway. It does a real number on your brain because we're not equipped to deal with that kind of thing. When we're sexually assaulted by someone we know, someone we love, when a child to a father is like looking at God. So when it crumbles, it tore apart everything for me. And, I've turned everything into the good now. But for me, what it did is it made me question my teachers, the government, God, any kind of man-made type of structure. I just thought, let's pull that curtain aside, see who's really behind that curtain. Doctors, even to this day, have a hard time dealing with me because I'm like, well, I will take your guidance under consideration and then make my decision. So that's how it is. It's given me such a total sense of who I am, though, because I have such a total trust in my own instinct, so that no matter who is telling me anything, I'm listening, and I respect what someone might be saying, but I always make my decisions for myself. And that's what has actually helped me be a visionary and a leader.
Yeah, it makes
So
sense.
just about
You said something that was really interesting. I'm sorry if I'm cut you off there too short.
Go ahead.
But, the out of control thing, feeling powerless, having no control over your environment or your life. I, too, became extremely independent. I moved out when I was 16, just because there was other things going on as well. And it made me very, like I said, very independent. And I was always like a leader in school. I liked control. I didn't have a lot of control at home. I didn't have a lot of control over these horrible circumstances, but I liked control. I wanted to be in charge of myself, and you become a natural leader somehow because of that. And I knew I trusted my own voice. I trusted my instincts, my own voice, and I became extremely compassionate as well as most victims. I think because you suffer, that the root of a lot of passion and compassion is suffering. It opens you up to feeling. And so you do, there is gifts to the most heinous, horrible situations.
I know. One thing I won't ever say. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, working on having a healthy relationship with a man as an adult was a new thing as well. But I overcame it by choosing men who let me be a powerful woman, who wasn't trying to control me. I never wanted to be controlled after all those situations. And I'm sure you can understand that. Yeah.
I do. And I bet the listeners get it too. They're going, yeah, ditto.
You were going to say something. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I don't even know, but that's okay because we can cover lots of things. And so what I did with Inner Motion was to travel all around and do those trainings and really learn how to work with the dynamics of a survivor group, because there are special dynamics, whether you're in any kind of special themed or focused group, there are certain dynamics. So with the focus on sexual assault and all of us coming from those situations, we had to really learn how to communicate in new, healthy ways. Most of everyone in the group had dysfunctional family habits, and we knew that. And so we really spent a lot of time figuring out what's the best way to, how do you learn to take care of yourself in a group? How do you have your voice be heard, yet respect everyone when there's a big difference? And we accomplished so much because we became the healthiest group I've ever been in promotion. And to this day, two of the women are my best friends, and I talk to them every day, Janice and Robin. And what's interesting is when I took the job I have now with the Victim Services and Certified Rape Crisis Center of Palm Beach County, I said, well, I'm going to start this thing. It's an empowered survivor group. And they're like, what? Oh, yeah, sure. I said, where do you see what's going to happen? And so they're very supportive, and I started Survivor Action Team. And I'm telling you, these survivors I work with are just powerhouse women. Each one on their own is a whirlwind and could be on your show. I mean, they are consummate speakers, eloquent, heartfelt, dedicated like I am. We're all like, I don't know, I'm envisioning, how those horses, I don't know if they call them the Furies, but they're these horses running in a pack, and they're just so powerful. And that's what we're like together.
And and I appreciate what you're doing, because you're helping these women heal and find their voice, because there are people, as we know, people respond differently to crisis and trauma, that just kind of give up. They give up on life, and they don't really, and I saw in the statistics that a lot of victims don't finish college, they lose out. It was interesting. I'll read those statistics later. So it impedes the rest of their life in some cases.
I do a lot of trainings, and one of the things I mentioned to everyone, including the college kids that I'm in front of, I love to, speaking to them. I'll say, let's talk about the ways sexual assault affects you, whether it's from childhood or a recent rape or a rape from 5 years ago. Let's talk about what's going on if you haven't dealt with it head on. And I'll have them talk about it, and they're quite knowledgeable. But what I want to point out is, yes, we know about the depression and the withdrawal and the self-blame and the nightmares and things like that. But like you said, it can affect people on every level of their life. It wasn't just a physical attack. It was emotional, mental, spiritual, academic, financial, and any other part of the system of your life you can imagine. Everything gets affected. Sometimes they have to leave their jobs. Like you said, they drop out of school and may never go back. And their health is affected as well, not just their mental health, but their physical health gets affected. Mm-hmm. They go into a depression, everything, every system they belong to, their relationships fall apart, their family relationships, their personal relationships, it just goes on. And a lot of people are like, oh, I just, I tucked it away. I don't need to look at it. Well, what that is that's like a ball of energy, and it's sending out those striking vibrations that are affecting parts of their lives they don't even know. And so that's when you look at people that develop some, maybe bad habits, or they become OCD.
I was just going to say that. Yeah.
Compulsive. They do cutting, they drink. Yeah, all of it.
All the compulsions, because you're not dealing with it. I worked actually as a counselor in California, and we did a lot of trauma, drug and alcohol. It was dual diagnosis centers. And so I dealt with that quite often. People just don't want to deal with it. And I'm like, well, it's going to come out. You have to deal with it. Even if you, in AA, one of the steps, I almost think those steps are like magic for everybody. You have to deal with all the things that have happened to you. You have to write a list of, I think it's the 4th step. So I think it is really important to address those. That's the only way you're going to heal, unfortunately or fortunately, however you choose to look at it.
Well, for anyone listening, it's important that they know that looking at the past and looking at this monster that's been chasing you or whoever is listening, it can feel overwhelming. It can feel like a tsunami is going to drown the person. But if they can find the support through their local rape center, their friends, people who are supportive, friends who know how to support, because sometimes friends will say the wrong thing thinking they're well-meaning, but it's the worst thing to say, like, you're an adult now, come on already, or, I just don't want to go, why deal with it now? And things like that. So it's important that you just support survivors in the right way and let them lead the way. But the point is, when you turn around and you face that monster, I promise that monster gets whittled down to just the smallest thing. It takes hard work. It's not easy. It does take a lot of bravery. But what's the alternative?
Right. What is the alternative? I like that. You do have to be brave. And of course, I worry about people and women who've experienced this. I had to be very mindful about relationships. I'm always afraid they're going to I was able to overcome that part, but that piece. But I'm afraid they're going to get in a relationship, kind of repeating the abuse and the trauma that's going to create that same trauma, those same feelings, which is why they have to deal with it. So I know that's like half the people or 25% of the people out there that we're talking to, this has happened to you.
Yeah, exactly.
And
men too. And also, when I'll say, I do a lot of trainings to lots of different audiences, and I'll say, everyone in here who knows someone that's a survivor of sexual assault, please raise your hand. And then, whoever doesn't raise their hand, I'll say, okay, for those of you that did not raise your hand, I guarantee you know somebody. They just haven't told you yet. So maybe by the time we're done this training, you'll come away with a way to talk about it that lets people know you are someone they can tell and trust to have the safe comeback. So,
what I wanted to go into? Yeah, that's wonderful. Just the healing, and I just appreciate you so much. One of the things I was telling you about this article I read in the Huff Post, and I wanted to read it. And will you please correct me if this seems inaccurate? But it's 30 alarming statistics that show that the reality of sexual violence in America. And so it says, what does the epidemic look like? And it says every 98 seconds, someone in the U.S. is sexually assaulted. That means every single day, more than 570 people experience sexual violence in this country. And that's only in this country. I know in the Middle East, it might even be higher. And I said, that's just in this country. And that's the people who report it.
Right. That's right.
And then it says, go ahead.
Yeah. You're probably going to get to the stats later on about the underreporting and what percentages don't report.
That's actually not in there. Why don't you cover that? I was looking for something like that. That actually wasn't.
So, for instance, in Palm Beach County, that's where I'm working right now, 704 cases were reported in 2017. Now, that's only 15% of the actual rapes that happened. 85% of rapes go unreported. Therefore, if you do the math, it's roughly around 4,400 that went unreported, which makes you think really carefully about what's going on out there and the rapists that are not being caught. And rapists repeat. People just don't rape somebody once. If a person is raping someone, they go on to do it again.
You know what the most disgusting thing is to everybody listening? 99% of those people are walking around and are not prosecuted.
Right. Yeah, the low prosecution rate. Yes. It's
99%. Let me see. I'm sure. Yeah. The percentage of perpetrators of sexual violence, well, they might have gone to court, but the percentage of perpetrators of sexual violence that will walk free, that still walk free. Yeah.
Right. Right. It's like an inverted pyramid. So you have all the people reporting, first you start with all the people that are raped, like say 100. And then you have how many reported? 15. Then you have, how many were prosecuted? 3% of that. How many received sentencing? 0.03 of that. You see what I mean? It gets smaller and smaller. And here's the thing. I will always truly, honestly give kudos to our Sexual Assault Response Team here in Palm Beach County and down in Broward. They're amazing. So the Sexual Assault Response Team is comprised of all the agencies in the county that serve victims of sexual assault. That includes the police, all the 34 different police municipalities, the nurses, the doctors, the EMTs, the fire rescue people, the teachers, the VA, everyone and anyone that comes across in their agency or organization, someone that might report, all the colleges, they come to our Sexual Assault Response Team, and we meet and we collaborate and we write protocols and study national best practices. In fact, we are national best practices now here in Palm Beach County because we are so forward thinking. And that includes our state attorney, who is amazing. I mean, they work with us on the Start by Believing campaign, which is a whole world of its own on how to respond to a victim when they report to you in a responsible manner. And I do a lot of training on Start by Believing with police and everyone else that I reach in the community. The state attorney's office is right there beside me, training the police officers and working with them on how to work, better together and strengthen cases and mainly strengthen the survivors to get through that arduous process. So even though that number is horribly small, none of us are happy about it, and we're constantly doing things to address that. We have spent a whole day doing a strategic plan with, again, this whole Sexual Assault Response Team took a whole day to address those gaps and have a plan on how to change those numbers. So we are on top of it. But it's so deep, it's a huge systems change. And we are doing it, but it takes a long time. And then you get these throwbacks like the Title IX issues going on right now. So it's always a battle, but you can never give up. You might lose a war, but we're not going to lose. I'm sorry, it's backwards. We might lose a battle, but we will not lose the war.
Mm-hmm. And then one of the things, to get back to this article, is saying that sexual violence permeates our culture, from violent rape scenes on hit TV shows to sexist dress codes that reinforce rape culture, from famous athletes telling young girls that they're supposed to be silent, to near daily stories of sexual assaults on college campuses, which is actually, I know that is made mainstream and it's been discussed and people are aware of that now, which I didn't know until I saw it in the mainstream news. And then from a former, this one I know all about, from a former Olympic doctor accused of sexually abusing more than 100 women, and that was in gymnastics.
Right.
And they mentioned to the President of the United States, and I'm not saying that I'm for or against him, who has been publicly accused of sexually assaulting more than 15 women and was recorded boasting that he grabs women by the where. So
Right.
these are examples that create a culture that reinforces the normalization of sexual violence. And for me personally, I feel like music, modern music especially, is a culprit. The way some of the hip hop, and my children, and even one of my young girl, she likes it, and I try to keep her from listening to it. They talk about slap your bitches and hoes and all this crazy stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Did I say anything I wasn't supposed to? I think you can say those words. And it's just, it's disgusting. But the problem is the kids have the phone. They go and download iHeartRadio or all these apps that they can get them on. So it's very tough to keep that from your children. It's yucky. And then it said, since the first step toward preventing sexual violence is understanding the reality of it, they've rounded up 30 statistics that show how insidious it is for the National Sexual Assault Awareness and Prevention Month. What is that month, by the way? I don't have the date on the article.
It's April.
April. Okay. So sexual violence is a problem that is deeply rooted in our culture, and these numbers prove that. So they have 17,700,000. And that number is significant because the estimated number of women who have been victims of rape since 1998. And again, that's reported victims. And I bet you there's another 8 million people who have not reported these crimes, because I know for myself, I didn't talk about it for a long time, a long time. And then the percentage
of perpetrators. What made you finally comfortable to come out?
Yeah. Well, there were so many strange things. I had so many horrible things. Well, the thing when I was 7, that I went and said, I went up to the school and I said, this man was naked and he was trying to get me in the car, and I saw white stuff. So they believed me because I was too young to know what that was. And they're like, they knew right then I was telling the truth. There was no doubt about it, because I was explaining things that I shouldn't know. And so but I became very embarrassed by it all. I remember the police would come and there was all these presenters and speakers, and I knew it was about me, so I became very embarrassed and withdrawn. And as far as the relative, I talked to other relatives, and it saddened them so much that I finally stopped bringing it up because I just wanted some validation. And I thought, you know what? I brought it up once. That's all I need to do because it's hurting the family. And he's already passed on, so we can't prosecute him even if I could. But I just kept it to myself. And, like I said, I went to my mom when I was probably 13, 14, and she said, I don't believe you, as I told you. So I don't think I talked about it till I was in my 20s, and I was in my first relationship, and I told him about it. And there was another issue too. I was visiting a friend, and I woke up, and when I was 14, it's so sad. I actually am embarrassed that this happened, that so many things have happened to me. I was over at a friend's house, and I used to do gymnastics. Speaking of coaches, our coach, come to find out, I had a few best friends. We were on gymnastics together and cheerleaders and different things, various active things. And so come to find out, our coach had molested many of the gymnasts at school.
Wow.
So anyways, I was over at one of the gymnasts' house. This is another story. I can't believe it. And this was really supposed to be a safe town. It was a Bible Belt.
Right.
It was so shocking. And so I was at her house, I was spending the night, and I woke up and her father was on top of me trying to kiss me.
Oh, God.
I guess, and I don't even remember it all that much, but my best friend at the time who I reconnected with goes, do you remember that? And you came over to my window and you were banging on my window and you were too afraid to tell your parents and you were crying. And I'm like, oh yeah, because that was one of those things I kind of blocked. And so, it's so tough to discuss that stuff. And I don't know why we carry that shame and that embarrassment.
Right. And then once you do start talking about it, it releases a little bit more, and you find out you're not alone. Like you said, I kind of was embarrassed because so many things happen so many times, but that's the story of most women. What we're finding out, and it's coming out now because thank God.
Me Too movement. The Me Too movement.
Yeah, Me Too. And focusing on how sexual harassment is all part of this continuum that leads all the way up to sexual assault.
Yeah. And I especially in the workplace, it wasn't as bad as some of those experiences, but there's definitely like managers asking you out on dates and just crazy stuff that happens. And you feel like, okay, I'll go out to dinner as a friend. How do I keep my job and manage this? Not sleep with the guy, but try to, it was a very tricky thing to navigate. I'm like, well, I'll just be a friend. I'll be maybe more like a personal. It was really tough to have that pressure put on us. So needless to say, I like to work for myself. But it's just, this Me Too movement, all of a sudden, all this rage, all these women had it like a Band-Aid over it all. And all this rage and hurt came pouring out of people. Everybody I knew started telling me all their things. And I don't know about you, but I thought I was in the 1 percentile. I literally, when this happened, all this stuff happened, when I was a kid, I had no idea what was happening to anyone else. And I didn't even know about all my close friends from junior high, that they were being molested by our coach. But I actually got out of gymnastics. I got too tall, and people may not know this. You can't be a good gymnast if you're too tall. And so, but anyway, so I didn't even know all these other people were experiencing things like that. I had no idea. So I grew up thinking that it was just strange thing that I went through, and it wasn't very common, and it's just interesting. So that Me Too movement is ripped the Band-Aid off everybody, all these women's, and we just became a powerful voice. And people are like, well, why didn't you say something sooner? Because we didn't feel like we had the power. We didn't feel we would be believed. We were ashamed. We're afraid to lose relationships. That's why. And we didn't feel comfortable until everybody else came out.
And some of the women that are not supporting other women, I don't like that. Like, I'm pretty good about putting up with a lot of stuff because I know what it takes to make this movement go forward. So I'm used to hearing ignorant comments all the time, and just, I don't buy into it, or else it would, stop me in my tracks. So I learned how to be like a river, keep flowing. But when I see women tearing other women down about sexual assault, maybe because my mom didn't protect me, that might be like an old issue kind of thing. But I look at that like, no, you have to step up. You cannot do this to other women. It's even more, somehow more wrong. If that's
I agree.
English. But I know They're
Maybe some
pretty
denial in
amazing.
them. I don't know. I don't understand it. I've seen that too. Even like a woman I respected on television, how she sidestepped it and didn't
Yeah.
want to believe the victim. And I was really disgusted by that because
Mm-hmm.
how many of us weren't believed?
Thing is, this cuts across, you know, it cuts across every culture, every socioeconomic, every kind of political group. It happens to everyone. And that's what has happened because it has happened to everyone from every walk of life. It's a huge tidal wave now of acknowledgement and speaking out, and there's no stopping it. It's too late. It's never going to get, the genie's never going back in that bottle.
That's right. It's all coming out. And you know what? People are straightening up. Although it's a little sad with the kids, but it's good for, at first I was like, oh no, you know, boys and girls can't hold hands, even if they're like 5 or 6. And now the new thing is like, you tell your son or your daughter, may I hold your hand? And we can go running together. And I thought that's awful that kids have to be that way. Then I thought, you know what? No, it's not. They're learning at a young age. They're learning at a young age to respect boundaries.
Well, we're in the unique age. It's almost like before computers, and computers came along, and we're like, what the heck? And then here we are. I mean, I can say that because I'm old enough. Maybe not you, but I grew up when there were no computers, and I remember thinking, well, I'm not going to learn coding. I bet they're going to fix that, and I'll just get to be, you know, it'll be user friendly, and it was after a while. But that's what I mean. It's always rough when you're going to have a revolution. It's always rough making that change because everybody's used to patterns of being the same way and how it relates and what does this mean? How do I have to change and what am I going to lose? Am I going to get in trouble? What have I done? So everybody's looking at themselves going, oh, Lordy, is there somebody in my closet that's going to come out and accuse me? I've heard a lot of guys in a moment of honesty say that on television, like, oh, hope there's no one that thinks I ever did anything to them. So they probably did. And some of the most honest guys have said, I probably did do something inappropriate because of the, you know, culture, and I was ignorant, but I'm aware now and I am an ally. And that's one of the most important things too, is how wonderful the men have been to step up and really show their support, their knowledge, and their willingness to never be just a passive bystander again, because everybody has to do something. Everybody has to get involved. No one's allowed to look away.
I agree. Everybody has to get involved.
Something.
Yeah. And maybe this will be an evolution of some men. And I do not hate men. I love men. I had a wonderful father. I have the sweetest husband. I've been blessed. So I don't hate men. We don't hate men. This is just a problem with a percentage of people. And it's got to stop. And we need the men to step up and be aware. Be aware of how they treat women, how they not to act on their impulses. Because a lot of the men who are raped by other men as well.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, and I'm always encouraged by, even when it's bad news, like a president saying, grab him by the pee.
Yeah.
What did that do? I think that helped galvanize this movement. It was like coming along, and when he said that, it caused so many great conversations, so many debates, so much yelling out of all these truths and feelings, and it made the conversation go to a new level. And that's what's been happening. The nuances of the conversations are fantastic, because 5 years ago even, we weren't talking quite at this level. We were starting to get there. But now that the Me Too movement has been in full swing, people are talking about things like, well, what exactly does consent look like and mean? Like, what do you mean I can't have sex with somebody if they're drunk? I mean, they said yes. And I get to talk to college students who didn't know it's illegal to have sex with someone drunk because they cannot consent.
Yeah, I actually didn't know that. I didn't know that myself.
Right.
Mhm.
So that girl wakes up and goes, "What? No, that's rape," because I remember saying yes, and I don't want to have sex. I didn't want to have sex with, whoever it was.
I had a quick question. Did the Me Too movement start after Trump? Because we might have to say a big thank you to Trump because he definitely got the ball rolling and getting this, got Pandora's
He did.
box open.
Yeah, the Me Too movement was started about 10 years ago by Tarana Burke, and she runs the Rape Crisis Center up in Washington, D.C.
Mhm.
She's an amazing woman. She's been, in it like we all have for decades. And I'm glad to see her get the recognition once it was
It hit the
tagged Me
mainstream,
Too.
right?
It hit the
Mhm.
mainstream, and they said, "Oh, yeah." And at first they were just running with it. And then somebody said, "Wait a second, that belongs." Toronto started that. And, everyone's talking to each other these days because of social media. And
Right.
so it's real quick to clarify things. And
But when did the
she's
Me
doing a
Too
great job.
hashtag start?
That was because of social media, but the Me Too movement and the hashtag Me Too is all the same thing.
Right. I just thought
And the
seemed to
hashtag just
happen.
started.
Yeah.
It really hit maybe, I'm trying to think, it feels like it
Year.
really
There was
blew
an
up in the
anniversary a
last,
year ago.
really, it feels like it's
I
been a
think it
couple
was a
years,
month
but
ago. Maybe it's 2 year, but
really?
I could have sworn it
I
was
don't
the
know.
hashtag thing it had a year birthday. Maybe it's a 2 year birthday.
Oh,
Who knows? It's been a long year, maybe. It feels like 2 years. Who knows?
well, you're right, because you can look at it by all those award ceremonies they have where they really highlighted Me Too, like the Oscars and the Grammys. And wow, I mean, once Hollywood took it on, forget it. That was putting it right there in front of everybody.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Can I share some more statistics?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so let's see. So I told you about the 17,700,000 people that have been raped since 1998, and then 99 is the percentage of perpetrators of sexual violence that will walk free. 13 is the percentage of female rape survivors who will attempt suicide.
Oh, yeah.
That's really sad. And 64 is the percentage of trans people who will experience sexual assault in their lifetimes, transgender. And then the total, go ahead.
People don't realize what it means to come out as a trans person. And what's happening is a lot of them are getting kicked out of their homes. Like, they come out young, and the highest age of trans people who are getting abused are like 14 to 16-year-olds because they, it's becoming apparent they're coming into their sexuality and they're starting to speak out, and the parents are literally kicking them out of the house, and then they're trying to live, and they're getting taken advantage of, and then getting raped by people who pretend to be helping them, or they are trying to make a living, and they're, possibly deciding to go on the streets because that's where they've been thrown and getting attacked there.
It's very, very sad. There's more about transgender.
Yeah.
So, and this article jumps around a little bit. I wish it was more categorized. And it said that it's $127 billion. That's the total amount of money rape costs victims every year in the United States, excluding child sexual abuse. That doesn't even include child sexual abuse. $127 billion for 1% to serve any time or to be prosecuted. That's just unfathomable to me. And then 16 to 19 is the age range that women are 4 times more likely than general population to be victims of rape, attempted rape, or sexual assault. Female college students ages 18 to 24 are 3 times more likely than women in the general population to experience sexual violence. Would you say that's true?
The percentage of people in college who are being raped, 1 out of 5 women. And so, especially the new, they're called fresh meat instead of freshmen, and they have a whole system set up. The rapists prey on them. They go up and befriend them and say, "Hey, would you like to come to a party?" and make them feel welcome and included and special. They get to that party and they've been marked for, to get either gang raped or raped by that person who's going after them. Now, I will tell you there are a lot of colleges stepping up and doing the right thing, and a lot of young men that are looking out for the women that are being drugged. But that's one of the main things we teach is the, about the roofies and the drug-induced rapes. It's very serious and very real.
Definitely. So the other, let me get to the next one here. 1.8, the amount of times trans people of color are more likely to experience sexual violence than the general population.
Right. Right, because it's already, they have so many things going against them. They're, already being stereotyped, and then they're being tossed away by family and friends. So
marginalized, yes.
Marginalized, that's the word for it.
And then 1 in 6, that's the fraction of American women who have survived an attempted or completed rape in their lifetimes. So this is rape, actual rape. Because I thought that's what I was thinking. That's why I thought it was only 1 in 6 women who were sexually assaulted. That's because sexual assault is more than just rape. I didn't understand that in my head when I was younger. So that's why it was higher. So yeah, that's actual rape, and that's very traumatizing. And then we have...
all of it is. So if someone is, let's say, they're touched with the other person's fingers, or they use an object, or they use their mouth, or they're exposed to pornography, or they're grabbed and they are, the person might grind on them till they, finish.
Or touch them. They want you to touch them or kiss them.
Yeah. It's all invading, and I wouldn't put any kind of level or label on it. It's all bad. It's all traumatizing. So, sometimes when we're talking about rape in a group, someone will say, "Oh my God, that is awful. I would never want to go through that. Your rape is so much worse than mine." And I'll have to say, no, you can't really say that. I mean, you wouldn't want to go through hers because you're hearing about it, and it is awful. But yours is just as bad, so there's no discounting. Everybody
damage is the same. And all the reactions physically, psychologically, and mentally are the same from what I understand. Suffering is suffering.
Right. So that's important then for the people listening. Don't discount your experiences just because, he didn't penetrate me with anything. That still does not mean it was not traumatic. You lost control of yourself. You were invaded, and it was wrong.
Mm-hmm. And here we're going to get to the men. 3.
Okay.
That's the percentage of men who will be raped in their lifetime. And I did a little research, and it's mostly by other men, family members. And in Latin cultures, I had a friend in the Latin cultures, because this is all in the U.S. These statistics, they said it's very common in Latin cultures, which shocked me, and I'm not even sure why that is. Yeah.
I'm not sure about that, but I believe...
I don't have evidence of that, and I don't have like a academic article on it or anything, but I've had people tell me that.
Well, I know the percentage by some groups in America, they call out 1 in 6. And if anyone is listening and is a male survivor, wants to help somebody, reach out to malesurvivors.org or 1in6.org, and that's a group. Those are organizations run by male survivors. And then RAIN, RAIIN, they're a group that publishes a lot of statistics, but they also provide a lot of resources and someone to talk to, and they'll refer you to the right place. So that's a good...
On that note, we have a break. On that note, we have a break coming up here in a minute. Mona, I'm going to wait on the second guest. I've sent him a message that we're going to, this interview is going a little bit longer, so let's hold out, and you don't need to call Donald. I've also notified them so we can continue this important conversation. We should be going to commercial here anytime. So will you say one more time where men can go who are also victims?
Malesurvivors.org and 1in6.org.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to Whistleblower Heroes. I am here with Sharon Daugherty, and we're discussing sexual assault. So let's just kind of pick up where we left off. So we just talked about men, that the percentage of men who'll be raped in their lifetime. So the next one I want to bring up is the number 90, and that's the percentage of adult rape victims that are female. And then the next number, the next number I have is 322,000. And that's the average number of reported victims of rape and sexual assault per year in the United States. That seems a little low, but I guess so. That's the numbers they have.
I'm not sure. It depends where you're getting all the numbers from. I know you said Huffington Post, so I'd look at those numbers as well. But on the 90, it reminded me of another number, and that is 90 is also the percentage of people who know they're rapists. So,
interesting.
Yeah, so it's called Acquaintance Rape. Now, it might be from somebody you met on Tinder and you talked back and forth a little, so you really kind of didn't know them, but you did. If you're going to go to the point of meeting them and go on a date and then you get raped from that, that's still considered acquaintance rape, because it's not someone jumping out from the bushes behind a wall in an alley.
The way that it's so often portrayed on television and movies. Yeah.
Exactly. So people need to realize they can know somebody for a long time and something can happen. So, there's a lot to understand about this whole situation of what is really going on out there.
And here's an
aspect. Why when people
go ahead.
Oh, good. That's why when somebody says to you, let's just say it's Mark and it's a mutual friend, Mark, raped me. I know we've known him for 3 years, but, we went out and went back to his place. I thought we were just going to watch the movie and he raped me. And somebody might say, not Mark, not nice Mark. But again, that's what I mean. It can happen from someone you know. So then when they're telling a mutual friend who knows Mark, that's why it's hard to believe sometimes for people.
Yeah, it really is. So now I'm going to get into an interesting, I don't want to say interesting, an aspect of assault that sometimes people don't want to talk about because they're inmates. So 80,600 is the estimated number of inmates who experience sexual violence in prison or jail every year. They're still human beings, and this they deserve to be. This needs to be heard as well, because it gets worse. And then 60 is the percentage of instances of sexual violence experienced by inmates that are perpetrated by jail or prison staff. 60%. That's the part that I find appalling. These are our public servants. This is our justice departments.
And this is a huge deal, and we deal with this. It's called Prea, the Prison Rape Elimination Act, and it is an act of Congress to get this to stop, and it's being addressed, but it is such a deeply embedded, culture and system that has to get broken down. That's why sometimes you have to have things fall apart for them to come back together again in the right way.
2 is the number of times a person with a disability is more likely to be a victim of assault than than a person without a disability.
Ella, you're hitting all of it. And what happens is we call them the vulnerable victims. And the perpetrators are going to go for the vulnerable victims. People who can't cry out for help, people who can't or won't report, people that won't be missed, like prostitutes often are, raped and attacked and killed because they're considered to be easier prey. So yes, people with disabilities are high up on that list, and even elderly.
Yeah, I was going to say that because I did hospice volunteer work and I couldn't believe it. And it's employees. I just was shocked. And then also people who are institutionalized in mental health facilities. I've heard it from them too.
Yep. Absolutely. Anybody that's in any kind of compromised situation. People who have immigrated here and that are under, whether they're legal or not, they're in a compromised situation trying to, find good employment, and they're depending on people for help, and they get themselves into some situations that, they'll find themselves vulnerable as well.
Mm-hmm.
And people take advantage of that.
They do. That's very
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah.
That's so sad. So 100, this number is important because that's the percentage of sexual contact between inmates and prison guards that is illegal and therefore non-consensual. 100%.
Wow.
So,
That's
yeah.
big.
Yeah, that is a large number. I mean, that's 100%.
Wow.
You can't get bigger than that. And then the next one we have here is 242,000. That's the estimated lifetime income that a survivor of sexual violence who is abused as an adolescent loses. We were talking about that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
How it affects their esteem, their ability to finish college. They're so deeply affected. So I don't know how they came up with that one, but it seems pretty
Right. They
accurate.
do a lot of studies, and
They
I
really
do
do.
believe they're getting somewhere with these numbers. Whether they're completely accurate, they are headed in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
As
Absolutely.
far as starting to uncover the impact it's having on our lives. And sometimes people relate better to financial impact, like the idea that we're losing citizens who could be productive and no longer are a productive part of our society. So however it's got to be worded to ring the right bell, to make people worth fighting for. You'd think you wouldn't have to convince anybody of why rape is a horrible thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny, when you write grants, you have to justify why this needs to be funded.
You would think they
you
would
gotta
just
come up-
know. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, got to come up with the numbers.
And this is interesting. 400 to 1,500 is the amount of money it costs to get a rape kit tested. According to the Violence Against Women Act, a survivor should never have to pay for their own rape kit, but many states have loopholes that force survivors to do that. I didn't like that at all.
I could tell you, Palm Beach County doesn't do that, and a lot of places that's not happening. So a lot of places, they're getting their rape kits done for free.
Good, as it should be.
There's a national program called Victim Compensation, and every county should be plugged into that and know how to apply for victim compensation to be reimbursed. And not everybody has a great SANE program like ours. We have the Sexual Assault Nurse Examiner program, but I know in Florida, every county is required to have to have a certified rape crisis center, have a up and running SART, have the SANEs on board. These are specially trained nurses that know how to do the rape exam.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's not as, I have to look at that because I didn't think it was as big as they're making it sound, but I do trust VAWA, and Violence Against Women. We work with them, and they're really on top of things. They're the ones that originated the Start by Believing campaign. So they have definitely been rolling out some best practices all along.
Well, that's good to hear. I was a little shocked about it. Oh, go ahead.
Well, in fact, they featured our work in Palm Beach County in their last member spotlight. We were all over the place. So as you work in this field long enough, you all get to know each other and you'll support each other's work,
Yeah, that makes it more powerful too, if you can work with one another. So here's another stat. 12 to 34 is the age range in which most people are likely to be sexually assaulted. We were talking about rape early, but that makes sense to me.
Right.
That's the age when people are sexually assaulted. Mm-hmm.
But I, don't want to burn your brain by whoever's listening, but, with trafficking, they're trafficking children as young as, 6 months old. And then there are people that are raped that are 85 because we've seen them here in Palm Beach County. So I get that age range you're saying, but it's the full range of the lifespan.
I want to share something. I'm putting my heart and my everything out there for everyone to listen to, and my pain, because I know other people going through this. And this is something I'm going to bring up that I don't know if I've ever talked about. I probably didn't. I've been a foster parent, so there was a lot of horrible things I've heard. I had a boy who was sexually assaulted by a cult group since he was 5, who came to live with me when he was 12. Most angry kid I've ever known. I actually adopted a beautiful girl, and when she was 4, she was raped by a cousin.
Wow.
A precious girl, absolutely precious. And she's one of those empowered, independent girls already. I'm telling you, she's somehow, yeah, she's just really, she's a special kiddo. And not just that, she went through horrible things. You know, kids, if they make it to foster care, there's some serious stuff going on. Yeah, so you know, she's already, we've talked about it openly, because I don't want it. The first thing I did when I got her, I'm like, you know, if you ever want to talk about that, you don't be afraid. We'll talk about it, because this is going to help you in the future. I go, you want to write about it? Write it to me and I can read it. So I made it a really comfortable environment. I've always made it comfortable to talk about their trauma and about sex. They tell me all about more than I want to know. But I just wanted those to be comfortable topics. I wanted them to be comfortable with their bodies, because a lot of them would go, that's the bad part. Oh, those are the naughty parts. And when kids come in, I said, oh, they're not bad or naughty. They're private. So you have to recondition kids. And so, but that is something that we talk about. And she seems, you know, empowered by it. And she's a tough, tough, tough little cookie, that one. She's a super special girl. She's definitely somebody, because some of the kids that you get, they've given up. They're hopeless. They're detached from the world. But she's one of those kids who just kind of rebounded and has that spirit. She's very strong and powerful little girl.
Well, she's lucky to have found you.
Oh, I'm blessed to have her.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That is a lot. And right. So when I talk about the age range, no one's safe. I hate to say it, not to pass doom and gloom. Things are changing. And
yes, they are. We have cameras everywhere. Thank God. There's cameras in these hospitals now. I mean, they used to not have as many. There's cell phones everywhere. You better watch out. That's right.
I know. And the world's changing right around us, and it's fantastic. And the younger kids are coming up, and they're more empowered than ever, and educated and aware. We weren't quite brought up like this. I mean, I wasn't. I was brought up in that old-fashioned style of things, and knew it was wrong as I was growing up in the culture, you know, the old-fashioned way of thinking, like patriarchal stuff. But it's very different now, and it's changing. I know we have still a far way to go, but I'm completely, utterly envisioning the right kind of healthy, beautiful future we can have together in our society, even when things look bleak. I don't let that worry me.
Agreed. Okay, so the next one we have here is, we got that one, the percentage 21. That's the percentage of trans or gender nonconforming students who report being sexually assaulted while attending college. Yeah.
I would believe that, because if we're saying 1 out of 5 women, that's 20% right there. And so the bar is going to get raised a little more for people that are vulnerable. In fact, someone just told me about a rape that's called conversion rape, where someone's getting raped, like they're being corrected back to the heterosexual style, as if a rape is going to do that.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. But you know what? And this is something that's always intrigued me. People have always interested me. And I remember living in Los Angeles for a while and having, homosexual friends or bisexual. And I remember I was very curious how they became the way they were. And actually, and some of them like, oh, I think I was born that way. And then other people like, no, I don't know why. As I got older, and then I'd ask them a question, a very important one. I'm like, were you molested when you were a child? And every single one said yes. And I do believe people are born with sexual proclivities that maybe not be the norm, but it was very interesting. I don't know if it was a certain demographic, but they all said yes. And even like some of the homosexual women, even like Ellen DeGeneres, she was molested by a man when she was younger.
I understand all that molestation going on, but I hold to the theory that it's born. You know, they're
Do you
born
think
with
it's
it.
born? Okay.
I do, because a long time ago, I had this discussion, and I was also inquiring and having discussions. And one of the things the community did teach me was they do stand on the fact that they're born, it's in their genes, and you know, however they feel and choose is up to them. It's
Okay.
I understand what you're saying.
better
There's a
than
high
men.
percentage of, well, yeah, I just want that out there since it's on the air and the listeners are gonna really go into that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but then again, look at the percentage of people who are assaulted in general. So it's pretty high
Yeah,
too. Now that I
exactly.
understand this perspective. So then it says 46, the percentage of bisexual women who report being raped in their lifetime. That's like half.
Wow.
It's kind of like we were just talking about. I didn't even know that was the next one. So that was interesting. I mean, and I can imagine if someone's experiences men in a way like that, that maybe they're not comfortable with a man, because that's what Ellen DeGeneres basically had alluded to. But as you said, I don't think that's necessarily the case when you see young boys dressing up with girl clothes and things like that. So it's tough to say, but
Well,
I do know.
like a lot. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. A lot of our, like, I'm out with my girlfriends and we'll be like, all right, that's it. I'm sick of men. I'm going to be bisexual now.
I'm only going to date women.
But, you know, maybe some of the thinking's coming out of that, but no. Okay.
So that was really interesting to me. And I remember living in Los Angeles, and a lot of women were like, yeah, I just didn't have luck dating men in LA. I'm like, well, you got to do what everybody deserves love. It doesn't matter, you know, who you want to love.
I think a lot of people are bi-curious too.
And you know, I almost brought that up. I have a scientist friend, and he says he does academic papers. He has multiple degrees. He's a brilliant guy, and he believes that. He says that it's just that the society has conditioned us to be gender specific in the Bible, which is part of society, Bible teaching and things like that. So he might be right. I mean, he definitely knows animal behavior, and he works at the in health field. It's just fascinating. But I thought, you know what? He's probably right. It's society, because if you see it in the animal world, you see some when they're in heat, they're in heat. So it's prevalent in the animal world. And he was talking about the bonobo apes, how they are, and how it's whatever pleasure that it doesn't matter if the guys are striking the guys, and not to get too in depth here, but it was interesting. He made me start thinking. I like to hear things like that because it's something I think. So I'm like, So, and then we'll go here to the next statistic. Go ahead.
Yeah. All I'm saying is that I hear your statistics, and I don't have that in front of me. I'd love for you to email it to me later, but these stats are just staggering. And it seems like when it comes out in, you know, either from CNN or Huffington Post or, you know, Washington, that people listen. Somehow when it's in the media, they're like, whoa, that they're printing that. It must be real. And so it gives validity, you know?
Really does. So the next number we have is 18,900. And I think about this group of people a lot for various reasons. It's the number of military service people who experienced unwanted sexual contact in 2014. This article is from a few years ago.
That is such a big issue. You're naming all of the areas we try to focus on through, you know, victim services where I work. So, yeah, it's big. The military sexual assault issues are huge. I don't know if you're going to get into it, but the whole Catholic Church issue is huge. It's like that huge.
Yeah, you know, that struck I thought about that too when I heard the commercial or the promo. I'm like, it had that Catholic Church congregation or the singing, and it made me think about that as well. I'm like, oh, and I remember like hearing when I was a kid, this boy told me that he was molested by a priest, and I'm like, oh, I actually didn't believe him or thought he was exaggerating because I, as a little girl, thought that priests were like next to God.
I
used to go
know.
to Catholic churches. I didn't believe it, but I mean, I believed him, but I found it shock. Maybe I'd never said I didn't believe him, but I remember in my head going, but that's just bizarre. That can't be so. Because I really thought people who held those positions are like close to God. I like when I go to church, I'm like, oh, he's a priest. He's perfect or pretty. This is just your naivety when you're a child.
Well, this is what I want to give to the world, and I thank you for giving me this opportunity to put this thought out there to reframe all that. And it goes like this. Those priests who are sexually abusing boys and girls are not priests. They are sexual predators posing as priests.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that thought.
So remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they don't need defending. They're not anything of a spiritual nature. They are predators hiding in the robes.
Mm-hmm. We can talk about that a little bit more since we have a little bit of time. I basically canceled the other interview just so we could. Well, I love that guy. He was here not too long ago, and he totally understands. He thinks this is such an important topic. So we can cover that a little bit because I had no idea it was so prevalent. I think the world was shocked. I think people
here's
had a
when
hard
I
time
learned
believing
about it. Okay, so 30 some years ago, I mean, it was like, I don't know when it was, 1987, I discovered victims of incest can emerge survivors. I don't even think they're around anymore, although some of them are still on my Facebook. So I go up to Chicago to this national meeting, a conference of incest survivors in 1987. And I go into this conference. I fly to Chicago. I'm a student. I'm just getting my master's degree, and I'm just starting to talk about my sexual assault. So I go into this very nice hotel, lots of glass elevators. And when I signed in, they had these huge yellow tags shaped like a big flower. And I thought, no way am I putting that on my clothing to say, yeah, I'm here. I'm a victim of incest. Yes. So I'm going to put that thing on. So I get into the elevator. There's about 6 other people who I considered normal looking people, bright-eyed, professional men and women. And they all had that tag on from Voices. And I reached down into my bag and I pulled up my tag and I put it on. And I looked around the whole hotel and there were like 500 people walking around the hotel with that tag on. In my life, I never realized 500 survivors of sexual assault would come together and be so open. And that's what blew the lid off things for me, was Voices. And I'm eternally grateful to those men and women. After that first meeting, I joined their board of directors and I stayed on for 5 years. It was just amazing. It was there that I learned about things like clergy abuse, satanic ritual abuse, and probably 57 different other kinds of abuse. I'm walking in thinking father-daughter incest, and I find out they had special interest groups, and their 57? List literally was,
oh my goodness.
You could join what was called a special interest group, and it was to talk to other people with your type of abuse. So I'm walking in going, incest. No, they had women abused by women, men abused by men, women or people that were used in pornography, people who were abused by sadists, people who, just on and on. And I read that list and it just made me sick. And it broke my heart for all those people that had all these other issues, but it opened my mind. It blew the doors of my mind wide open to realize how much was going on out there with abuse. Anyway, they had classes on stuff like clergy abuse and what was going on. We knew back in 1987 they had a special monastery, where is it, Santa Fe, New Mexico, or somewhere out that way, where they sent their predators to, the priest predators go there. We had the Office of the Attorney General working with us, so we had a lot of good input and information that was cutting edge. They were also on top of things as far as pointing out, pay attention to human trafficking, because that is what's one of the main drives underneath all this. You know, children being stolen and sold, and this whole network of predators that were so well connected. We knew back then they were if you thought the mafia was good, you try looking at the predator network. They were more connected and more organized than the mafia.
And now they have the dark web to do their dirty work.
They shut down the dark web and they started something else. I don't know what it's called, but they shut it down this year. But then, you know, something else is going to pop up too.
I still think
they'll never shut it down.
Still. Yeah, it's called a subdomain, and there's something like that in existence. I've done some research on that.
Yeah. I'm afraid to even research it. I don't, you know what I mean? I don't know what would happen to my computer.
You don't want to go in there because you'll be reversed. Your IP will be discovered. They research every IP address that ends up on those type of networks or those type of servers. Everyone's like, don't go there. Number one, it's so, appalling from what everyone tells me. You can get anything and everything, and child pornography, everything. You can buy anything on it. So, it's just a very dark place. Murder for hire, all kinds of. I don't want to go there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, don't want to go there.
It can get very dark. What we're talking about, and that's the thing. We can talk about rape. We could talk about incest, but it's really quite a huge undertaking because it's so interconnected with so many other things. Like my dad, he used pornography to try to entice me to have sex with him. He would always try to, he would say, he would even bargain with me. He would say, if you would just watch this with me while he would masturbate, then I'll leave you alone tonight.
Where was your mother?
Oh my gosh, that is the question.
It just seems natural. Like, where's your mother? I mean, wouldn't she notice?
Well, she knew, and she just looked the other way. She did know. I came to find out years later she knew for many reasons and many ways. Like when I was 7, he went to her and said, listen, I'm thinking of having sex with Sharon. And her answer, instead of, knocking him out and calling the police, was, if you do that, I'll leave you. So that gives you an indication. And then our next door neighbor came to her and said, listen, I just want to tell you that Ed offered to let me have sex with Sharon. And see, that guy had 3 little girls that my dad was trying to probably get a hold of. So he was hoping to do like a trade. So the guy, Don, just shut it down, and so, I came to find out she knew. But you know what? It's been a long journey, and I've actually gone through what it feels like to understand that I didn't have a mother who loved me, nor a father who loved me. And when I accepted that and dealt with that, which was hard because you basically are orphaning, realizing that you're orphaned. And so that is why my other families are so important to me and so real, because I truly was without parents once I started my healing process.
And you're more connected to them. They really are your family because it's not about blood. We both know that.
Right. Definitely. And I'm blessed to have my brother and sister in my life. So that's awesome.
Good. That is great. And I'm sure they understand, and you have each other at least. You all survived. We
did. And we talk openly about everything. So we have an extremely close family as far as having gone through the fire together.
Well, let me go back to the military thing here. So 1 in 7 is the fraction of military service members who experienced an assault at the hands of someone in their chain of command. That's pretty high. Right.
Now we have the Veterans Administration here in our county that does a very good job. And in fact, remember when I mentioned our Sexual Assault Response Team and I said the VA, they come to the meetings. They come to our campus roundups. They come to everything that we're doing in terms of training and networking. because they want to be the best at what they're doing. And they really are. They're fantastic here. So I can only sing praises about Palm Beach County. I love this county.
Well, it must be it must feel really great to live in a place like that that's making a difference. I mean, that just shows that your hard work is not just being ignored, because there's other groups that I'm working with, and there's nothing worse than not being validated.
Right.
And not trying to make a difference, because it's public awareness and then actually getting the manpower to make a difference. And there's nothing also worse than like this happening to you and your government's not protecting you, or the police aren't protecting you, or whatever the case may be. That does happen too. It makes a person feel very vulnerable.
Oh yeah. That's the whole point. We get in front of the roll call and do in-services and do trainings in the police academy. So we're very integrated into their training curriculum, because we bring not only information about what our services are and when to access a victim advocate from our agency and what the rape exam involves and all that, but we integrate the start by believing concepts. We talk about the brain on trauma. We follow what's called the FETI model, and it's a forensic exam. Something investigation, trauma investigation. So it's a way to understand when you're speaking to someone who's just been raped, their brain is on trauma, and so it's not going to operate in a normal linear fashion. They could have left their body. They could have broken down into like one sense, like all the other senses might have shut down and they only could hear, or they only could smell or taste. So that's how it is when we're in trauma. Your body goes into survival mode and your brain reacts differently. You go into the limbic system and it's fight
survival.
or flight.
Fight or flight and survival.
So time gets changed. It could slow down, it could stop, it could rush. You can forget things and then remember them later. Everything gets chaotic and disconnected.
It does.
So asking a person, it's not like, well, I went to the grocery store and I dropped my purse and then I got in the car and then I remembered my purse. So I went back in the store and that's when I got mugged, or something like that. They can pretty much remember a timeline. With a rape, it's not like that. It's going to be all over the place and then memories come back in pieces.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, I'm familiar just from working with trauma survivors years ago. I did learn about that. And it's interesting, the things that heal, but we might save that for a different episode or a different show. Hopefully you'll come back, because this has just been wonderful. So we can work on that, because I saw a lot of success with certain things, even like equine therapy, just working with animals. It was amazing. That trust is there. They're animals. So animals are a lot less scary than human beings, especially to someone who's been victimized.
Oh, look at all the great dogs they have around now. That's fantastic. It's being recognized.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have that here in our town too. We have dog therapy. We have what they call dog therapists that come out with the police. So the police have their own dogs for that. Very impressed.
Yeah, there's definitely some things you can do to really assist. The healing's a whole nother show. But we'll go back, because I know you can help people and get them in touch with who they need to be put in touch with. And you guys can email me as well, whistleblowerheroes, and it has an E in there, at gmail.com, and I can put you in touch with people as well. So back to the statistics here, and this is something I didn't think about, but I remember studying this actually when you become a drug and alcohol counselor. I remember this. This is about Native Americans. So 5,900 is the average number of Native Americans 12 years and older who report being sexually assaulted each year. And I'd heard there's alcoholism and gambling and different things going on, and sexual abuse. So that I was glad to see that in there, and it made me remember that.
Right. I've heard, what was it? Tell me the numbers again, please.
5,900 is the average number of Native Americans 12 years and older, and I imagine it's much higher than that. There's a lot of reasons why they wouldn't want to come forward.
Right, I think it is. You know, you gave me an idea. If I wanted to give out the number for RAIN, and should I give the number for Palm Beach County to call, or just do more of a national? Okay, so if anyone, if anyone is looking for help with sexual assault, and we also serve all victims of violent crime, whether it's domestic violence, stalking, sexual assault, DUI, that's what we do. Palm Beach County Victim Services and Certified Rape Crisis Center is there to serve, and we are free. It's a county government agency. The number to call is 866-891-7273. So I'm going to repeat that, 866-891-7273. If you're outside of Palm Beach County, you could call RAIN, and that would be 800-656-4673, 800-656-HOPE, 4673.
Thank you. I hope people act, and don't be afraid. I know, again, we know about the fear and we know about the shame and the embarrassment. Don't be afraid. There are things that can be done. There are people there to help you, and just have courage. Your life will change once you take the step to reach out to another person.
Right. And, you know, every county has a rape crisis center where they'll come out 24/7 to help that person. Don't wait until the morning. If something happens, you need to, I hate to say it, you got to get the forensic evidence that's required. If that person chooses to go forward, you don't want to wash that away by taking a shower, even though that's the first thing you want to do. You don't want to brush your teeth, drink, or eat anything, even go to the bathroom. You want to get all that captured, you know, when you go to the rape exam center. And always ask for a victim advocate to come, because that person's going to come out and sit by you and be your advocate. So everybody else has their job to do. And, you know, the patrol answers, and they're to establish, was a crime committed? Who do I need to call? And, you know, clear the scene that it's safe. And then turn it over to the detective if they want to move forward. And then the detective, of course, is going to do his job, or his or her job. But a victim advocate is just what it means. They are going to explain options. They're going to give you crisis counseling. They're going to explain everything and stay with you and literally hold your hand through it and stay with you from beginning to end.
Yeah. So, okay, the next one, and again, it's funny, the statistic shows up after we were talking about it. And again, I just want to say, everyone listening, it's the only time it's going to be difficult is that first time you reach out. That's the toughest part, is that first initial contact. And you will gain more courage. The more you talk about it, the stronger you become, the safer you feel to discuss these things. And you will be empowered. It's all about empowerment. There's victims all around the world that have suffered the things that we're discussing, and victimized in other ways as well. And you got to find that community, the people that have been through that. You will heal. I believe connecting to other people who have been victimized in your area, or just victimized in general, will heal you as well. I found so much relief connecting to individuals that have endured similar situations.
That is absolutely true. There's something about sharing our souls with each other that just makes it all more bearable, no matter what it is.
And I don't think there's a deeper, like as I mentioned earlier, I don't think there's a deeper, more intimate connection either than sharing.
Yeah.
Okay, so this was the next statistics, 94. And this seems obvious to probably me and you. The percentage of women who experience symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder during the 2 weeks directly after being raped. And I think it's the results of rape and assault is a lifetime battle. We both know that. So of course, people experience PTSD.
But at least they got the number up there. That's true. And I'd be surprised if anybody gets away with not experiencing it. But I'm sure that could happen. But yes, you're right. It's going to last more than 2 weeks. It takes a long time to heal.
Right.
But healing, that's the whole point, though. Healing is definitely possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So 7 in 10, that's the fraction of rapes committed. We're talking about rapes committed by someone the victim knows, as we discussed earlier. There's assaults and rapes, for clarification. Mm-hmm. We all know that.
Right. So we're close. I had said 90%. You've got 70%, and somewhere in between, there it is. Mm-hmm. And that's good. That's right.
I think it's higher too. Area. I mean, I'm thinking about my own personal experiences and my friends. You know, you have the gymnastics coach at our school, people's fathers, relatives, step relatives, neighbors. I bet you're right. I bet it's more closer 9 to 10. I don't know.
All of these numbers are very hard to measure anyway.
Yeah, and they vary too. Like you said, it's a difficult a difficult case study, I'm sure. And so then. Okay, this is an interesting one. It's 57. And I don't want to make it seem like non-whites are more violent, but it says in America, when you think of the percentage, but it says, I didn't want to bring this one up. The percentage of sexual violence perpetrators that are white is 57%.
I don't know about that. I couldn't even, I'd have to look that up and see what kind of.
It's funny. I crossed it out because I don't know how they would know anyways. I don't know about that. And so my gut said to cross it out for various reasons. But then 93 is the percentage of child sexual abuse perpetrators who know their victims. This was child sexual abuse. That makes sense. 93% is the percentage of child sexual abuse perpetrators who know their victims. I believe that. You trust them. You trust the adults. You trust your neighbors.
Oh, yeah. That whole grooming is what they do. And so by the time it happens, sometimes they entice them to love them or to believe that they're loved and they're having a relationship of some kind, crazy as that sounds.
Mm-hmm. And so the last statistic they have here, and I thought about this, but I had two, I cross-checked different articles, and I actually looked at RAINN as well. It says 2%, 2 to 5% are the false reports. So out of 100%, just a very, very small percentage are false. And, I don't know how false. Maybe they're exaggerated. Who knows? We can't really say. And then we have the entire percentage of people who just keep it to themselves or only tell a few close friends.
Right. So the false reports, that's an important one because people don't realize how small that number is. And so why, just based on that, wouldn't you just automatically give them benefit of the doubt and believe?
Exactly.
And the whole idea behind start by believing, is this. Even if you have a bias, even if you think to yourself, well, you're out drinking with them, you were partying, hanging all over them, and now you say it's rape? What's the deal? Here's what has to happen, or hopefully would happen, is that person would say to themselves, look, I know how it might have looked last night, but I don't really know what happened. So because this person is saying it's rape, I'm going to move forward and treat it like it was rape. I'm going to put all my biases aside and give this person their due process, their rights to be heard and believed and to get help, and just let it unfold. I don't have to be the judge and jury. Let me just be a helper in this moment.
Exactly. And here's
I was training
go ahead.
Okay.
We still have plenty of time.
I was working with the lifeguard. We were training some lifeguards actually on human trafficking. One of the lifeguards said, and it's okay, whatever anybody says, it's where they're at. But they said, well, I don't know how quick I'd be to go up and talk to someone, because one of the tools we give them is what to actually say to someone if you think they're being trafficked. Like, we get them comfortable and practicing what would be real to them. We can't hand them just a sheet and say, here, read this off. You have to really, so we spend an hour training. Now we're talking about the questions, and the one guy says, I don't think I'm going to say that to anybody. I'm not going to say anything because you know what? Unless they're a kid, I'm not going to help them. Because if they're an adult, they put themselves in that situation, so they need to just deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, I'm really glad you brought that up because this shows what I was talking about before about biases and how important they are to know. You've
Mm-hmm.
just bravely shared your bias with us. And now what I say to that would be this, not to change your bias. That's not going to happen in probably this lifetime, but, certainly not in an hour of training. What can happen is this. We've gotten to the point where you named it, recognize it, you're feeling it. Now let's imagine you're going to go out into that water and you see somebody, an adult, who put themselves out in that water. They chose to go out there. They're the adult now, and they're starting to drown. You are going to throw them a lifeline. You're going to throw them, something they can float on, and you're going to grab them and bring them into safety, no matter that they're an adult and knew what they were getting into and should have known better. That's all I'm saying about people that are being human trafficked, sex trafficked or labor trafficked or any of it. Whatever, doesn't matter how they got into it. They're there now. And could you just treat them like a drowning person and throw them a lifeline?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping that made a little bit.
You. I hope so too. This just popped in my head. To listeners out there that maybe have not been sexually assaulted on some level, or you have, and you have people coming to you to share the crimes committed against them, what is the best response? To everyone listening and someone comes forward to tell them a story similar to what we are hearing today, how should they respond in a way that validates them?
You can say things like, wow, thank you for trusting me. I hear you and I believe you. I'm here for you. You can talk to me as long as you want. I'm here to listen. And do that. Just listen with no judgment and let them talk and just tell them how brave they are. You can ask questions like, have you ever talked about this before? And whatever is normal, but just actually saying a few things to let them know you're open and receptive, and then being quiet to let them talk.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they're done, you can say things like, that must have been really hard for you. Thank you for trusting me.
Mm-hmm. And I hear what you're saying. I think that just those few words mean a lot sometimes. I hear what you're saying. And say, I'd hate for this to happen, but we know every few minutes somebody's getting assaulted. How can a person protect themselves? I mean, that's such an open-ended question.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's something really important. I taught my daughter, you say no, or I've taught them ways to protect themselves physically, like some moves, like getting the eyes or certain places that I know are vulnerable on men or women, just human beings, I should say. But what are your suggestions, and how?
Well,
and I guess we should talk to our children too. Let them know, hey, if this ever happens to you, you come to me. You can talk to me anytime, and I'm going to listen, and I'm not going to judge you. Or what are your words? What do you think we should say?
We can say that over and over, and there's some like a split thinking on that. One of the premises is by constantly telling people how to protect themselves, we're pretty much saying, therefore, if it happens to you, you could have prevented it. So people need to know, we're going to go ahead and teach defensive training. We're going to teach self-defense, and we're going to do things to hedge our bets for safety. But sometimes it doesn't matter how well you plan. A person can be vulnerable at any moment. So knowing that and understanding that and moving forward, it's one of the trainings I use in trying to show, like, again, the college students, the young men, what it's like to grow up in a world of sexual harassment. I'll say, for instance, gentlemen, Were you taught that when you walk to the car to thread the keys in between your fingers and let them fan out like spikes so that you're ready to fight if someone jumps you? Were you taught to park under a light near the door so that you're not out in the dark by yourself? Were you taught to look in the back seat and under the car before you get in it? And to not jumble around with your keys, but to hurry up, put it in the locking, get inside, and lock the door once you're in. Don't fumble around. Were you taught to turn around and face someone if you hear them walking too closely behind you and you don't know who they are? And the guys are like, no, no, no. And I'm like, right. Well, guess what? Every woman in here has heard all those things and does them. That's our lifestyle. That's our culture. So we can do all the prep work we want. I mean, you know, a lot of more women have gotten guns and gotten tasers and done everything. And then I dropped the phone. Are you still there?
I'm still here. Life happens while we're talking.
Yeah. So we can have all the prep and training we want and still things happen. But I'm going to go ahead and get trained. I'm glad I know what I know. One of the first things I know is to have a quick response. Like, if I see someone coming towards me that I don't want them near me, like I'm in a parking lot and they might be saying, hey, lady, I don't even want to hear it. I'll just say, stop right there. I stop them as fast as I see them, and I hold my phone up and I go, I'm on 911, one step closer. And I'm just like, I don't mind making a scene. I don't mind shouting. So it's going to be every person for themselves to decide what they need to do to be comfortable. But yeah, it would be good to get some training to know that you can actually rip through zip ties and duct tape. There's a way to break it, and everybody should study that on Facebook.
And then
YouTube.
Also, I think it's important too, because so many of these crimes are perpetrated by people we know. Learning the dialogue and what to say. Like, I like when people say, you just scream no really loud. And I want my children to know that if someone's threatening them, that it's just their angle trying to keep you to be quiet and, speak up. You need to, anything.
And they're not going to, right. And most of the time, they're not going to kill your dog. They're not going to kill your family. And don't let them think that's going to happen.
Right. Just, say no and have good boundaries. Like, this is not acceptable.
Yeah.
And
right.
Boundaries are so important. And of course, as we know, victims of crimes have boundary problems the rest of their life. So those are boundaries that we need to be teaching our kids. And it doesn't matter what age you are, you can still learn boundaries. You just have to find your voice.
Right.
Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid to make a scene, yell for help, all those things. But like I said, and the other thing I taught my daughter, I also have a daughter, she's 22 now. From early on, I taught her to really hurt the other person. Like, don't play around. Make sure they can't get up and run after you.
That's better than having you dead or having you raped or anything like that. I kind of taught my kids that too. I was just horrified. I mean, because you hear about rape and incest and different things like that. And when I got this precious little girl and she told me about her cousin, and then of course DHS knows everything. And the guy actually spent a month in jail, a whole month. Wow. And he was on meth. So he went to treatment center. It's like, oh my goodness. Yeah. It's very sad. But I went and looked on the map.
You shared.
Oh, well, it's hard. It really is. But people can, number one, people think, oh, she's got such a nice life. And I'm like, no, I'm a human being. Or people just don't understand it. And I want them to know that it's happened to me too. And that I found my strength and I found my power. And you all have that ability too. I just learned to communicate because I didn't talk a lot when I was a kid. At a certain point, I was very shy because of all the experiences, and I found my voice. I became the opposite of the way I was, super shy and awkward and not socialized. I was just very fearful. I had so much fear around everything, and I'm pretty strong these days. I had to work on it.
That shows what I was saying earlier, how it cuts across all socioeconomic, racial, cultural, political. There's no, it's the leveling of all of it. It's just so broad and pervasive, and there's no way to tell which culture does anything more because, you know, like from my experience, it's 100% white because my dad was white. So you just don't know where it's all coming from. It's way beyond statistics. Like this issue, not to overwhelm people. Sometimes it can be like, oh my gosh, it's too big to handle, but it's not. The whole world's fighting back.
And just for some good news,
yes.
The good news is there has been a sharp decrease of, in reports of sexual assaults in the past few years. So I don't know if that's true, but I read that in a few different sources. What do you think?
I would doubt that. I think there's more, and I think that more kits are being tested, you know, the rape kits. And so
this is from 3 years ago. Yeah, this is from 3 years ago, this article. Oh, that's it. Will you please tell people how to reach you and
yes.
Can you give your links and everything? Thank you.
Okay, 561-625-2568 to reach me at work. This is Sharon Daugherty from Palm Beach County Victim Services and Certified Rape Crisis Center. We are here to help 24/7. So if you're a victim of violent crime, give us a call. And look up Palm Beach County Victim Services. We have a website, we have a Facebook, and we have a Twitter.
And always please donate to our station. Come back anytime, Sharon. You can donate.
Thank you so much, Ella.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening.
Don't forget to donate to our station, freedomslips.com.